Hey, I'm Dr. Ruth Roberts, the creator of the original CrockPet diet, and I hope that y'all are well today. I had several questions about feeding the CrockPet diet or any home-cooked diet to puppies. And two of the questions were around large breed dogs, and then one was just sort of in general, and in fact about a toy breed that had been experiencing low blood sugar or hypoglycemia. So with regard to the little pup, the little toy breed that had low blood sugar, regardless of what you're feeding with those guys, they seem to sort of outgrow it somewhere around 4 to 6 months of age. If that doesn't happen, then that's when you need to talk with your veterinarian about looking at something called Addison's disease, which is not fun. But essentially what it is the failure of the adrenal glands to produce enough of the mineralocorticoids, which are the hormones that help keep your electrolytes in balance. We think of Addison's or the Cushing's disease most often when we think about the adrenal glands not working well, but Addison's has unfortunately become much more common in recent years, which really kind of stinks. So, but in general, with toy breeds, if they're experiencing low blood sugar, often the deal is to keep some sort of a sweet something on hand, so honey, something of that nature for sort of a rescue. But the best option is to feed 3 to 4 times a day to help keep their blood sugar up. Hey, Colleen, good to see you. Glad you could join us today. So that's kind of the deal there. And in general, it doesn't matter what you feed. The toy breeds do burn through calories more quickly, so CrockPet is certainly fine, but you may need to feed a slightly larger volume than what's listed on the sheet there. So just kind of look at how your puppy is doing in general. Does it look well fleshed but not obese? So meaning we can barely see the last 1 or 2 ribs. And so if you're seeing that the puppy has plenty of energy, then you're at a great plane of nutrition. So in terms of large breed dogs, the deal is that we got several large breed dog puppy foods on the market, and the whole goal of those is to essentially feed them regular adult food, or as AAFCO, all the AAFCO wording says, appropriate for all life stages, meaning puppy, kitten, adult dog, senior dog, all of that good stuff. The reason behind the lower protein diet and the lower calorie diet for large breed puppies is that they tend to grow really fast, and when they grow super fast and put on more muscle and body fat than their little joints can handle, we're setting them up for joint problems in the future. So the idea is that we want to feed them to the point where your neighbors are asking you almost, do you ever feed your dog? So a little bit on the much leaner side than most people are comfortable or accustomed to seeing. And that way we're going to let those bones and joints mature and grow without the pressure of too much muscle and fat on top of it. So large breed puppy foods by and large are very similar to actually regular all life stages or adult dog foods, and in some cases they're actually slightly lower in calories. So yes, so if we take that understanding, then yes, CrockPet diet is completely appropriate. One person was concerned about the calcium phosphorus ratio, and that's the thing that, because all life stages diets, whether it's CrockPet or any other commercial food, is set up for that for everybody, then the calcium phosphorus ratio is going to remain appropriate. Same thing with the original CrockPet diet. And that lady said that her female dog is not doing very well on a large breed puppy food. So and then the other question I had from Micheline was whether to use CrockPet or the large breed puppy food. And again, the concern was the appropriate amount of vitamins, bone meal, etc., given the age of the puppy. One other reminder, the CrockPet diet is designed to be used alongside a multivitamin. And the reason this is important is that sadly we can't get all of the nutrients we need from food regardless of how well it was raised. So the classic example is that 40 years ago, the nutrients in one bowl of spinach, to get all of those nutrients, you would need to eat something on the order of 40 bowls of spinach. Wow. So that's in conventional farming. Now, if you are lucky enough to have access to local farmers that are using organic methods or natural methods where they're turning in soil amendments that are nourishing the soil and not just using straight nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium fertilizers, they are able to get more of those nutrients back into the plant. But because each plant is going to vary by location and soil quality and things of that nature, that's why we still recommend using a good quality multivitamin. And that's why I developed holistic total body support, part of which is to make sure that the balance stays in the diet regardless of how you're feeding, and to provide glandular materials to help support your puppy's immune system and endocrine system as they're growing. So that's that on large breed puppies. Can you guys think, and actually feeding puppies the CrockPet diet in general, can you guys think of any questions about that at all? I mean, you're all pretty advanced users of the CrockPet diet. So that's awesome. The other question came from a friend and client who has dachshund that I believe is somewhere around 5 years of age, so just kind of middle age. And Debbie said that Penelope's been choking whenever she drinks water, and that's kind of weird. And she's doing all the smart things as far as she's already elevated the bowls to make sure that she's not aspirating water as she's drinking. She is, helping to. Sorry, I'm just reading back through here because my memory is a little bit slim. So she does not choke when she eats, and so the answer there is So, and she doesn't drink a lot of water regardless because of the CrockPet diet. So one thing maybe is if she's drinking a ton of water really fast, which is unlikely, to just limit the amount that she can drink on to say maybe a quarter of a cup at a whack or something of that nature, which is about right for a dachshund. The other thing is to make sure that she's not having any issues with her trachea, as far as collapsing trachea. So small breed dogs tend to have cartilage issues in the rings in the trachea. And so, you're supposed to have this nice round cartilaginous ring all the way through the trachea. So you have a series of these things, right? In small breed dogs, they can go from being round to having kind of a punched in shape like that. And so if you're noticing coughing at any other time or an increase in coughing during allergy season, that may be part of what's going on. And that's really kind of difficult. So what you might do is try putting not only the water up, but putting the bowl on a stand to where she has to stand up a little bit more and actually elevate her chest, and see if that's helpful. The other thing, and this is sort of salient to the second part of her question, is thyroid dysfunction can cause some issues with the trachea. And then also thyroid function can also cause problems as far as esophagus not dropping food or water down from the mouth into the stomach appropriately. So dogs in a worst case scenario can get something called mega esophagus, and that is what happens when the innervation to the esophagus is not working properly. So instead of this nice tube that goes, stays pretty consistent in size all the way down from the mouth to the stomach, we get this tube that ends up shaping like a balloon because the innervation to the center part isn't working well, and so it just sort of sits there and doesn't move. And then this part down here is working a little bit more normally, so it will start dropping some food and water into the stomach. But you can imagine if you've got this little balloon of food and water sitting there, that can create some coughing, although that generally creates issues after the puppy or the dog has eaten or drunk water, and they just sort of regurgitate. So they're standing there and literally all of a sudden, bloom, half a pint of water comes up and hits the floor, and they're sort of looking around surprised, and so are you. So that's an important distinction. Regurgitation, meaning it just sort of comes up, versus vomiting, which is active retching. And that's the sound that wakes you up at 3 o'clock in the morning like no other alarm clock possibly can. That retching sound, and they're going to vomit and spray evil spirits all over your house or floor. So that's one consideration. The second part of Debbie's question is that we had talked about sort of the odd colors, so blue dobies, harlequins, party colors, dapples, all of the things that are really, all of the color coat patterns that are really beautiful. But these guys, that's a genetic recession, and so the genes aren't quite right, and so they do tend to towards alopecia or hair loss. And so Debbie says that her fur is thinning on top of her tail, and also there is fur on top of her ears but not on the bottom of her ears, and fur looks fine otherwise and more like undercoat in softness, in texture. So she's already eating CrockPet diet and fish oil, and so Debbie's wondering if there is anything else she should be giving her, or won't it make a difference. So this is where Penelope's entering that phase in life, and I cannot remember if this had been a lifelong issue, but I think it is new for her. This is where she's entering life where her thyroid function may not be fantastic. And so even though you've got a normal thyroid test, even if it's Dr. Dodd's test, what I've seen is that if they're starting to show symptoms of hypothyroidism, sometimes we've been able to correct those symptoms simply by adding a little bit of extra iodine. That's part of why there is iodized salt in the CrockPet recipe, because it is an essential element, and if you don't get enough, really icky things happen. And so, there's a iodine complex that Claire makes that has about 6 milligrams of iodine in it. So for a little pup, somewhere around 10 pounds, maybe a quarter of that dose is appropriate. So that's about 1.5 milligrams, something of that nature. For a larger dog, maybe 6 milligrams. So you can try that for 30 days and see if the symptoms get better. If they don't, then I would certainly revisit that with your veterinarian. Now, and this is all assuming that there are no other skin lesions, like literally the hair is just falling out and there's just sort of dry skin sitting there. If there are itchy bumpies, funky crusts on the skin, things of that nature, that's a problem. You need to take your puppy or your dog or your cat to the veterinarian to get checked out, because that indicates that there is some sort of an immune response to something there. And it may be as simple as allergies, but it can also be yeast infection, mites, bacterial infection, all sorts of stuff. So that's kind of when to draw that line and go get things checked out. So that's what I know about kind of weird looking skin stuff that's looking a little thyroidy, but maybe thyroid tests are already normal. And certainly if you've not had thyroid tests done, that's always worth doing. And I mentioned Dr. Dodd's test because she looks at antibodies as well as free T4, free T3, and TSH. So that's what I can tell you there. Susan had asked about how to calculate the amount of food for large breed puppies, and sort of a good rule of thumb is that to look at about 15 calories per pound of body weight to up to 17 calories per pound of body weight. And then the CrockPet diet, and I may be misremembering it, so I apologize if I am. I'll check, and if I'm wrong, I will put the calories per cup in the comment section below. But I believe it's about 265 calories per cup of food. So if your dog weighs, we'll do some easy math because my brain's not working great. Your dog weighs 10 pounds, 15 times 10 is 150. Then we're going to feed somewhere on the order of about a smidge over a half of a cup twice a day. So that's kind of it. So that's a good rule of thumb. Again, look at your dog. If they're too skinny, they're trying to eat everything that's not nailed down, feed them more. If they are too heavy, then feed them less. And again, the thing that's amazing to me is that people have as difficult a time figuring out if their dog is too thin as they do figuring out that it's actually too heavy. So we've posted the body condition scoring charts multiple times through the Facebook posts. If you're not sure, go ahead and take a look at that or Google that and you'll find it. And so on a scale of 1 to 9, which is the scale I got taught to use, we want your pup or your cat to be at about a 4.5, so to speak. So that will make more sense when you look at those charts. So take a look at that. Colleen is asking about her pup being on thyroid medication for 6 years, and so should she still use the iodized salt for him? And yes, you should, because it's not an elevated amount, but it's the normal amount that is required on a daily basis just to keep everything operating smoothly. So when we give thyroid medication to support hypothyroidism, we are supposing that everything else as far as iodine and other nutrients are correct in the diet. The other interesting thing too is that if you get in a situation where the thyroid numbers are jumping around and your dog is on hypothyroid medication or some sort of a thyroid supplement, whether that's the synthetic one or the natural one, try increasing the iodine and see if those thyroid values stabilize a little bit. Things change over time, and the way that we utilize nutrients changes over time as well. So I hope that makes sense. And that's what I've got for you today. So we are, let's see, big news is we're in process of putting together some CrockPet recipes that will be updated to include both beans and no beans. So you'll have some sort of standardized recipes to start with, as well as a keto version of the CrockPet diet. And if you're not familiar with keto diet, I talked about it a little bit last week as far as it being used for cancer and things of that nature, and sort of to add fuel to the rationale there was a paper that came out that showed that high sugar diets do indeed feed cancer cells in yeast. So granted, a yeast organism is a long way from a mammalian cell, but this is sort of proof of concept, and now the next step is to actually test this theory in mammals, and I think there's a lot of people out there doing that. So that is what I know for today. If you guys have got any other questions, let me know. I think I've got them all covered. I got Colleen's, I got Susan's question. Good to see you, Sally. Thanks for tuning in every week. It really is, it's always great to see you and talk with you. So if you don't have any more questions, that's what I've got for this week. Until next week, remember, your pet's best health starts in the bowl. Take good care.